All right, so given where we are today and right now, we have ZackNet HV1 deployed. We also have ZackNet HV2 deployed. Hyper-V Manager is managing both the nodes, so that is up and running. And then we have the WAN switch created. We also have the internal network created with EVNG installed. That is up and running as well. And then we've also chosen the domain, which is zacknet.lab. And I'm not going to be touching EVNG for a few days. And I say this because there's a little bit of a caveat to that virtual firewall and switch image that I'm going to be deploying. And I'll talk about it later as we get to that part. But for right now, let's focus on getting the ZackNet core services enabled. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with installing ZackNet DCO1 using Windows Server 2025. And we're also going to be deploying ZackNet DCO2 with Windows Server 2025. So let's dive in and get our DCO1 provisioned and installed. So let's call this guy as ZackNet DCO1. And I'm going to store this virtual machine in a different location. And I'm going to select C drive, virtual machines, select folder. Let's create a folder on here. Name it as ZackNet-DCO1. And generation 2, of course. I think 4 gigs of RAM with dynamic memory is good enough. And for the network connection, let's go with WAN because I do want to push Windows updates on this guy. And for the hard drive, that name looks good, and it's going to be in the repository. Right here. And we'll select, actually, let's rename that. And we'll just keep it in the same folder for the most part. Let's give it 80 gigs of hard drive space. And we want to make sure that it is VHDX dynamically expanding. That way we don't just spike up on storage because we are a little limited here in our lab environment. I'm going to hit next. Let's install the ISO. So let's navigate over to our desktop where the ISO images folder is for Windows Server 2025. I'm going to hit next. All of that looks good to me. Hit finish. And start it up. Press any key for booting. I don't have a product key. And this is a lab environment, so we're just gonna test it out as evaluation for the most part. Should give us enough time. And we're gonna select Server 2025 Standard Desktop Experience. I agree to everything. Searching for disks. Create a partition. There we go. Install. While it's doing its thing, I'm also going to provision DCO2. Do the same thing I did there. ZackNet-DCO2. And we will place it in the folder of virtual machines. Generation 2, 4 gigs of RAM. connected to the WAN, and maybe I'm gonna give it like 80 GB of hard drive space, and select the operating system. Finish. Let's start up this guy as well. Oops, I might have missed it. One major thing I forgot to check was, let's give these guys an extra network adapter. We're gonna do an internal one. And for the processes, I guess we can wait till we shut them down as they're still installing. Should be relatively quick. The install should just be relatively quick. I don't anticipate it taking that long because it's running on NVMe storage, but it's shared. So I should probably mention the reason of having two domain controllers, which is important to understand that DCO1, it's going to be running Active Directory and DNS, and then DCO2, it's going to be our secondary domain controller that will also have DNS, and its purpose is basically replication and redundancy. And I will show you how all of this goes into context, how to get Active Directory and DNS going for the most part. Let's go ahead and enter a password for the administrator account. I'm going to keep the administrator account's passwords uniform. Looks like the first one is good to go. Let's try to log into this guy. Gonna run some quick Windows updates here. Type in the administrator account, or create an administrator account is what I was referring to. Let's log in. Didn't really want to change the resolution, but okay. Now let's go ahead and run some quick Windows updates. Okay, so I just rebooted both of our DCs and looked at Windows updates. Looks like we're up to date. What I'm going to do is I'm going to power them off real quick. And then while they're shutting down completely, while they're shut off, what we need to do here is we need to adjust some resources. So for the RAM, let's disable dynamic memory because I'm done updating it and everything. So we can go on and keep it at 4 gigs. That way we don't exhaust resources. And let's bump the processor down to 2 cores. And we will also do that for our DCO2. And the reason why I like to bump up the resources in the first place when I'm provisioning it, just so I get a little bit of extra bandwidth for doing my resource intensive tasks. But we will go ahead and address the configuration of DCO1 and DCO2 in just a little bit. But we need to first make sure that we install 2 more virtual machines. The first one is going to be called ZackNet MGMT01. And what that is going to do, that's going to be our management virtual machine. And the purpose that's going to serve is it's going to have the RSAT tools, ADUC, DNS Manager, GPMC, and it's going to have Hyper-V management and PowerShell. Think of it as if it's your admin workstation. And then we're also going to be deploying ZackNet Workstation 01. And it's going to have the main purpose of joining to the domain and testing out GPOs and test software deployment and DNS. So let's get started on our first management VM. And again, it's a straightforward process, as I mentioned before. And we'll enable dynamic memory over here and connect to the WAN for right now. And 80 gigs of hard drive should be sufficient for us. Dynamically expanding. And we will also install, we'll make this to be also a Windows Server 2025. Before I start this guy, let's get our Windows 11 workstation going as well. If I can type. Four gigs, dynamic RAM. Let's get the WAN. And I will also give this guy 80 gigs of dynamically expanding hard drive. And the OS that we're going to be going for is going to be Windows 11. I'll see if it lets me install Windows 11 Enterprise. That'd be nice. If not, we can go for Windows 11 Pro. It'll serve the same purpose. Caught it right in time. I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording, but whenever it's done and finished installing, I will go ahead and resume it. Alright, looks like the setup has been completed. And we're going to create an administrator account. Let's log into this guy and run some Windows updates. And while this guy's checking for updates, let's take a look at our Windows 11 workstation. And Microsoft likes to really put that first time initial setup bloatware on their user workstations. A good way to bypass this is to press Shift F10 and a command prompt should open up. So what we're going to do is we're going to bypass all of this. So we're going to type in OOBE /bypass NRO. What this will do is it will bypass that first time initial setup screen. So it's going to ask me to create an administrator account with a password. And don't worry, we'll keep it uniform for all of our devices. Alright, looks like we are logged in. Let's run some quick updates. I'm going to go ahead and pause this recording and resume whenever the updates are completed. Alright, so it looks like we're done applying updates. As I press on this, I don't see any further updates. And I know what you're thinking. There's a different local administrator account here and a different one for the server. But we will address that. But let's go ahead and power down these virtual machines. And when I mention we will address the local administrator account, that's going to be during while we're configuring it. Got the Hyper-V launched. And let's go ahead and bump down the resources to 2 processes and disable dynamic memory. And we'll do the same for the workstation. 2 processes and bump down from dynamic memory. Hit apply. And that concludes our video for right now. See you next time.